Good morning. My name is Maureen Chung. Welcome to Daily Devotional of August the 7th. And the Bible passage is Ruth chapter 4, verse 1 to 12. The title is, I'm Next in Line. A kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer was the male next of kin who was responsible for the welfare of the closest relative who is in distress or died. In ancient times, the kinsman redeemer was like the insurance policy for the family. Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 5 to 6 explains, if brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. The system of economy Moses designed was based on family ownership of land. If someone died without an heir, his land would become untitled. To continue the bloodline and keep the inheritance within the family, his brother had the duty to marry his widow and produce for him an heir. Such was the duty of the kinsman redeemer. If there was no surviving brother, the next closest cousin would be in line to purchase his land and marry the widow. Naomi tried to propose to Boaz through Ruth to take on the obligation of the kinsman redeemer, that is, to purchase the land of her late husband, Elimelek, and to marry Ruth, the widow of her son Mahlon. Being a man of noble character, Boaz was willing to do so. However, there was another male relative closer than he. Therefore, Boaz was only the second in line. Today, we see how he deferred to the first in line and what the end result was. Let's read through Ruth chapter 4, verse 1 to 12. Here we go. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelek. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead man with his property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Oh, then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelek, Kilion and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. The town gate was not just a doorway, but a covered entrance with rooms on both sides of the gate where elders of the town sat to rule on civil matters. Boaz followed the tradition to let the elders witness his invitation to the first cousin to take up the obligation of the kinsman redeemer for Ruth and Naomi. So 10 elders gathered in this civilian court, so to speak. Boaz was straightforward in his offer. Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelek. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. Verse 3 to 4. Why had not the cousin who was the first in line as a kinsman redeemer taken any action to fulfill his obligation to Ruth and Naomi by now? The situation of Naomi and Ruth was well known in Bethlehem. Perhaps he was preoccupied with his own business. Perhaps the well-being of Naomi and Ruth was not a priority to him. Now that Boaz had brought it up, he could not delay the handling of this matter. Quickly, he agreed to redeeming the land that belonged to Elimelek. However, he would not marry Mahlon's widow, Ruth, in order to produce an heir for maintaining the title to the property. Why? Verse 6 gives his reasoning. Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. How would marrying Ruth endanger his own estate? Imagine this scenario. If Ruth gave birth to a son who became the heir to her late husband's property, and if she couldn't produce another son for this kinsman redeemer, then this man would not have an heir to inherit his own property. At his death, this man's property would be transferred to Ruth's first son, who carried her late husband's name. This way, he might endanger his own estate. What if was his reason? On the other hand, God could bless Ruth with another son for this kinsman redeemer. Then his estate would not be endangered. Note that this kinsman redeemer's concern could also be Boaz's concern. Boaz's situation was identical, but Boaz was not worried about endangering his own estate. He would rather fulfill his obligation by obeying the law of levirate marriage in marrying Ruth and to relieve her from poverty and hopelessness. In modern terms, Boaz delivered on his social contract, the insurance policy, as I call it. Boaz was a man of integrity and honor. As the next in line, he deferred to the first kinsman redeemer. Although he was fond of Ruth and would like to marry her, he didn't jump the queue. He followed Moses' law, which was God's law to him. This is one lesson we must all learn. How often we disrespect God's order of priorities but impose our own priority over others. We prioritize what we want over what God has arranged. We cannot wait to let God work out the kinks in his time. Boaz was a God-revering man. Secondly, he was unconcerned about losing his own estate to another man's heir. He was first empathetic towards Ruth and Naomi, and then he admired Ruth's dedication and devotion to Naomi as a woman of noble character. He was sincere about helping them and meeting God's expectation. He lived the greatest of the commandments, to love God with all of himself and to love his neighbors as himself. Boaz had a generous heart. The elders applauded Boaz's gracious decision and gave their blessings. They wished Ruth the fortune of Rachel and Leah, whose 12 sons built up the house of Israel. They also wished Ruth the fruitfulness of Tamar, who bore Perez to Judah. Now, Judah's first 2 sons died, and he refused to let his 3rd son marry his eldest son's widow, Tamar, according to the law of Levirate marriage. So Tamar tricked Judah into lying with her. She then gave birth to twin sons, Perez and Zerah. Genesis chapter 38. Perez was the ancestor of Boaz of the tribe of Judah. Without Perez, there wouldn't have been this clan around the town of Bethlehem. From the joyful reaction of the elders, they did endorse the marriage of Boaz and Ruth. What have I learned? I'm captivated by the phrase, I am next in line. Am I content to be the next in line rather than be the first in line? The British King George V had 2 sons, Edward and Albert. Edward ascended the throne as King Edward VIII in 1936, but soon abdicated the throne to marry an American divorcee. Thus, his younger brother Albert succeeded him as King George VI, who was the father of Queen Elizabeth II. Albert, the next in line to the throne, never expected to be king. But when Edward abdicated, he had to take responsibility as the stuttering king. The next in line may never be in the limelight, nor ever seek the spotlight. But when duty calls, the next in line must be ready to step in. Personal ambition aside, the next in line defers to the first in line. It is as John the Baptist said about Jesus Christ, he must become greater, I must become less. John chapter 3, verse 30. It is well in ministry for us to let Christ always be the first in line. Yes, my friends, learn to be humble like Christ was, like John the Baptist was, like Boaz was. May God bless you. Please like and subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to get new video updates. Thank you.